Women with disabilities experience a lot of bias and discrimination at work. We're underpaid and discriminated against in hiring. We may be shut out of workplaces or events because they're inaccessible. In some parts of the world, people question whether we should have jobs at all. We absolutely need systemic change to address all of this blatant discrimination. But bias also shows up in more insidious ways, including our day-to-day interactions at work. If our disabilities are visible, for example, if we use a wheelchair, people tend to talk down to us, violate our boundaries, or even ignore us entirely.
I have experienced so many microaggressions as a woman with disability. For example, people often talk to me louder, or like I'm a child, or they say things, "Oh, that's so sweet," or "Oh, how lovely." And colleagues sometimes organize events that are not accessible, and they invite me and I realize it, or they don't invite me. They'll say things like, "Yeah, I didn't invite you because I didn't think you would want to come."
If our disabilities aren't visible, for example, we have chronic pain or a mental health issue, people may question whether we really need accommodations.
After I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, I was worried about access to the building. And when I voiced those types of concerns, the general answer was sort of just a big shrug. Like, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And I was thinking, well, I'm crossing the bridge right now. So maybe I could talk about it now.
Women with disabilities experience more microaggressions than almost any other group. This is because we face both sexism and ableism. And ableism in particular is one of the most intense forms of workplace bias. The burden should not be on women with disabilities to fix these problems. It's on leaders and companies to call out bias and create a better culture. Our colleagues need to do more to show up as allies too. But right now, microaggressions are an unfortunate reality. So, when you experience one, what can you do? First of all, know that it's not on you to confront anyone. If raising the issue feels unsafe or exhausting, just focus on taking care of yourself. Connect with people you trust for validation and support, and remind yourself that you are talented and worthy of respect. This is especially important since we face so much bias, and we're so often on the front lines of the fight for inclusion. If you want to speak up, research shows that doing so can help you feel more empowered and in control. It can also change other people's behavior. If the person who committed the microaggression doesn't realize they're causing harm or doesn't think they'll face consequences, calling attention to it could get them to act differently in the future.
I'm always sort of thinking and hoping that if I take time to educate, that it'll make a difference. Maybe not in the moment, but for the next person that they encounter. I think it's also helping to pave the way for people after you.
There are 3 main strategies you can use to speak up. One option is to simply state the facts. Researchers have found that this is one of the best ways to make someone aware that their behavior was wrong without triggering a defensive response.
When people talk to me like I'm a child, I will say things, "I'm not a child. You don't have to talk loud. I can hear you," things like that. When I arrive in new spaces with other people, people often talk to that person and not to me, assuming that I'm not there. I am certainly not one to be ashamed of jumping in and answering for myself.
Another way to respond is to ask someone to explain their thinking. We know from research that this is a good way to get people to re-examine their assumptions. You might be surprised by the power of the simple question, "What makes you say that?" You can use this question if someone makes assumptions about your personal life that implies that you don't want to attend an event, and in lots of other situations. If you sense the person acted without thinking and genuinely wants to treat you with respect, you could also tell them directly how their actions were harmful. It's often easiest to do this by following up privately. Following up later gives you a chance to prepare, and talking in private makes it more likely they'll really listen, rather than shutting down because they feel put on the spot. Describe exactly what they did and the impact it had. For example, if a colleague brushes off your need for accommodations, tell them, "It upset me that you thought I wouldn't need accommodations in that meeting. If I don't get that support, it's a lot harder for me to do my job." No matter how you respond, there is a risk that you'll get pushback. You can't eliminate this risk entirely, but research shows that you can reduce it by speaking confidently and deliberately. This is easier to do if you practice your response in advance. Finally, remember that you shouldn't have to deal with microaggressions on your own. If your manager is supportive, talk to them about what's happening. If you don't feel like your manager will be helpful, think about whether there's someone else you can talk to. Maybe there's a colleague who's been outspoken about equity and inclusion at work, or another leader or manager who you trust. Having an advocate can make a big difference, and you deserve to work with people who will speak up when you're not being treated with respect.